Welcome to the Poetry Box Live. I'm Shawn Aveningo Sanders, and I'll be your host for tonight's show. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, my husband Robert and I run a small boutique press here in Portland, Oregon, known as the Poetry Box. We publish about 25 to 30 poetry books per year. And the Poetry Box Live is our way of supporting our talented authors to help them connect to a broader audience. And for this month, we're changing it up a bit to celebrate the release of the poeming Pigeon, from pandemic to protest. And boy, do we have a great show for you today with 30 of our contributor poets from the book. So let's go ahead and get the show started. I'd like to start by sharing the introduction from the book. If I had to choose one word to describe the year 2020, it would be chaos. It's the year we will never forget. It was a year that started out with so much hope and so many plans. And then we were all gobsmacked by this dreaded COVID-19 virus. When the world came to a stop, the poets picked up their pens and the musicians entertained from their balconies. And after our strange compulsion to hoard toilet paper, we opened our hearts to the healers, welcoming them home from their heartbreaking job with a chorus of clanging pots and pans like it was New Year's Eve all over again, with its inherent message of rebirth. And so many aspects of our world are in dire need of rebirth. We've seen families torn apart, community leaders at their wits' end, an awakened awareness of racial inequality, a distrust in our long-standing institutions, and the continued struggle to reckon with our planet in crisis. The poems in this collection will take you on quite a wild ride, from global pandemic to Black Lives Matter's protest, from a highly contested election to murder hornets, and from devastating wildfires around the world. These poems not only share the truth of what we endured, they reveal our frustration, anger, grief, and fear, all tempered by our resiliency to keep moving forward. Today, we are standing on the precipice, holding our collective breath, waiting for a return to normal, or whatever that new normal looks like. Yearning to gather in community without masks, our smiles, and keeping our distance. We still don't know when or how this will finally end, but one thing is for sure. Compared to where we were a year ago, it feels good to hold on to this thing with feathers. It feels good to be lifted once again by this thing called hope. Perhaps that's what they should have chose for the name of the vaccine. After all, everyone could stand to be poked with a little hope for our future. So here we go with the poetry from the year we'll never forget. Our first poet is Tiel Aisha Ansari from Portland, Oregon, with her poem, Never Forget These Days, on page 19.
Thank you, Shawn. Never forget these days, these quiet days of no daily commute, these days of resting on the sunlit lawn, of waking unalarmed in summer dawn, of baking every kind of summer fruit, of families masked to picnic in the park, of bus seats sealed against adjacent use, of shocked statistics roiling in the news, of clothes reopened, spike, high water mark, of gas and flashbang fired after dark, of dark skin figured with still darker bruise, of leaves whose shadows hide a shadow noose, of long banked anger waiting for a spark. These days of summer slowly turning hot. These days of rage and grace and apricots.
Thank you, Tiel. Thanks for bringing a little bit more balanced view of what's been going on here in Portland. And I so love that last line, these days of rage and grace and apricots. Beautiful. Thanks, Tiel. Our next poet is David Belmont from New York City with his poem, Objects in the Mirror, on page 22.
One has to unmute before saying hello. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. It's funny, I was relaxing this afternoon listening to the first show of the Rolling Stones American tour this year on YouTube. And the fourth song they performed is the song from which the epigraph of this poem was taken. So the planets are aligned. Objects in Mirror, September 23rd to October 23rd, 2020. Nothing I do don't seem to work. It only seems to make matters worse. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, 1965. No waiting in the waiting room. No dining in the dining room. No classes in the classroom. Just hanging in the Zoom room. These are the days of wonder without the miracles of Paul Simon's Bubble Boy. A young Black woman struts the streets in a full masked camel outfit, like Billie Eilish accepting her Billboard Music Awards. Homeless people circulate in the recirculated air of the subway. They're making masks for brass players to put on the bells of their horns. They're trying to break up the COVID coalition in Denmark by killing minks. Apolitical Orthodox Jews send their children to super spreader schools, say they support the president. The cover of The Atlantic reads, "The election that could undo America." But America is already undone. David Brooks says that our democracy depends on the patriotism and civility of its candidates. Arlo Guthrie says he will soon be a thorn in the side of yet another administration. Christine Lagarde says, a good crisis is a terrible thing to waste. We hunker down for winter in America. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It is always such a treat to hear you read your musical poems. And for more of David's pandemic poetry, you can check out his recent book, World Gone Zoom, Notes from the American Epicenter, that we published this summer. I put the link in the chat. Our next poet is J.V. Birch, all the way from Australia, to share her poem, A Burning World, on page 25. Take it away, Julie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Shawn, for the introduction. This is a found poem sourced from an article published in The Guardian of February last year called We've Pissed Mother Nature Off Big Time, The People Coming Home After Australia's Fires. A burning world. The fire spread at 60k an hour. We knew we'd have to evacuate, but thought we had more time. When it came, the whole mountain seemed to explode. It was a land-eating monster. The noise was unbelievable. We've got friends who ran through firewalls. My brother had a bull killed sitting upright. It was instantly cooked, mummified. I was stunned when we drove back. You hold out that tiny bit of hope, just maybe there's something. But it was all gone, as if we'd never been here. I don't have one photo to show them what their grandmother looked like. I've not seen my husband cry like this. For me, it comes in waves. I call myself a fire refugee. It's as if there's been a war. There has to be some kind of transformation in the way we govern. I wish the people in power would listen. We've got to stop being such consumers. It's been a lesson for me not to get attached to things. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for reminding us that climate change and the increase in dangerous fires really is a global issue. I think we tend to think about it over here as just an American issue on our West Coast, and we need to remember that this is happening all over the place, and we need to really work on our not being such consumers and being so attached to things. So thank you for that lovely, heartfelt reminder. So I'm going to pivot here a little bit. Joanne was supposed to be next, but I just got word that D. Allen is here, so we're going to go ahead and introduce him so we can have him read his poem. D. Allen is joining us from Oakland, California with his poem titled In 3 Stanzas. Take it away, D.
In 3 stanzas. For Andrea Blackman and Rashad Rayford. I too am America, but the exclusion from tomorrow, the dinner table admits privileged company still. My color continues to be a strike against me, despite the claims of equality. The back door is still the only entry point, and the dinner guests see me mo as far less than they. Today, justice is holding an intense conversation with me at home about the crimes this country had committed in her midst. She ain't blind. This Native American sister with braids is going deep into the well of her people's history, how they were suddenly made prisoners and underdogs on their own land, a large mass of dispossessed. Let me tell you, justice wasn't all about sorrow. She laid some hope on me, for justice is proposing on how the iniquities of the past can be reversed. The best, smartest ally this darker brother can have. I will write the power too, becoming the hero I need to be for myself and for my long-suffering race. Speak out when the blustery voice of hate tries to assert itself over mine, to silence this verbal drama that divides us, creates the wrong, social distancing. That's what the powers that be count on. They shall have no excuse from my end. That poem was called In 3 Stanzas, from pages 15 and 16 of the new anthology, The Poeming Pigeon, From Pandemic to Protests. From this mic to your ears, I'm D. Allen. Thanks for listening. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day in advance.
Thank you, Dee, for adding your voice to this really important conversation and for lifting your voice above the hate to silence the verbal drama that divides us. And please know we're listening. Our next poet up is going to be Joann Renee Boswell from Camus, Washington, with her poem, Protester Police, on page 26.
Hi, thank you. That worked out really well. I just had some neighbors drive in. I'm sitting outside and it was really loud out here for a little while. So this was perfect. Protester police. Future dreams for those we pay to protect and serve. Dress them in flowers. Uniform of peace for police. These volunteers determined to assuage the harm systematically dumped since dawn of time by their precursors, powerful privilege bearers. Protection posture, they kneel, bulletproof but unarmed. Hands up, don't shoot, de-escalate from weaker ground. Guns changed for tools that diffuse. White flags holstered with patience, calm, Band-Aids, candy canes, empathy, understanding, giant ears plus microphone for you and oxygen tanks. So much oxygen. New costumes reflect years of conflict training. Hearts sewn on sleeves spill over rank markings, overshadowing stars. And stripe reminders sprout up pant legs, serve with love. Stations host potlucks where honored guests share sacred, scarred stories, remembrances of brutality their grandparents, parents, and children suffer. Together, they all put on shrouds of mourning. So more patches, promises more vigilant than body cams. Blue lives choose this uniform graffiti, softening starch. Join the march for justice when one of their own crosses the line again. It's slow. Trust must be re-earned and earned for the first time. They are always open to criticism, willing to learn.
Thank you, Joanne. I really love this reimagining of what our police could be, especially they are always open to criticism and willing to learn. Someday, Joanne, someday soon, I hope. Our next poet is Erika B. Girard of Cumberland, Rhode Island, with her poem, March, Our Duty to Make It Right, on page 50.
Thank you so much, Shawn. Yes, my name is Erika Girard, and this is my poem, March, Our Duty to Make It Right, an Abecedarian. Arguably one of the most significant battles we're facing in this pandemic of contemporary society is sadly that of the domestic unit. COVID-19 has now spread everywhere, from continent to continent, to fracture economies, communities, policies. Good to know that something can motivate humans when explosive words and devices are ineffective. But if you think the world embraces justice now, you are dead wrong. A new crisis of killing is rising. Domestic abuse rates have doubled, like shelter in place now means rest in peace, as memes have convinced us that social media is the news source we trust. We post how we have officially decided to relinquish the age-old pursuit of distinguishing days, but forget quarantine is a life sentence if an abuser refuses to calm down or talk it out or stay 6 feet away. If they get mad, they get mad. Understand me though. Do your very best. Hope wins until we forget who we are. You say you can't change the world, except now we have 7 billion people saying that you are the change. We must make it right, because 0 US school shootings for the first March in 18 years shouldn't need to be a headline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erika. I have to say those 26 lines sure cover a lot of ground. And I don't know if you guys caught it, but it's an abecedarian poem. And so as you're reading it, each line starts with the next letter of the alphabet. So it's pretty cool. And so many things to address, so many chances for all of us to be better and make it right. So thank you, Erika. Our next poet is Joanne Godley from Alexandria, Virginia, with her poem, Miss Corona, on page 52.
Thank you, Shawn. This poem is dedicated to the 732,712 people in this country who have perished from COVID-19. Miss Corona. Miss Corona burst into the ghetto like a rabid dog, spitting and snarling, a firebrand torching family roots, a rolling hacksaw on a lethal mission. If you had shared a smoke or shot the breeze or had a drink with any folks in the neighborhood, you were doomed. Show me 6 feet of distance. Show me the breathing space in a tenement shack or a shotgun house, or the projects in the city, or in a 1-bedroom apartment housing 2 families and a friend, or in a makeshift shack on the street, or a trailer, or a jail cell. Sometimes folks living together took turns cooking. On Mondays, Peaches cooked tamale pie. Cece cooked spaghetti on Tuesday. Midweek, Jackie made soup with everything in it. Leroy could throw down some fried chicken. And Sam had everyone hooked on his liver and onions, even folks who claimed they didn't eat liver. Folks and families did what they could to make ends meet until La Corona came through and everyone got virus smacked. Sad to say, piles of bills metastasized like any cancer. No matter, said the essential workers, rent still gotta be paid, bellies still gotta be fed, we've still got to grind and meet the man. There was no time to stay home. There was no place to shelter into. One virus don't stop no show until it does. Leroy picked up a gig at Amazon when they went on strike, working like his life depended on it. Because of his new job, he took to calling Miss Corona his good luck virus, till she laid him out flat. His teeth chattering, he coughed like demons were trying to buck his insides. His skin was hot enough to fry an egg, and he couldn't breathe. Leroy's luck ran out when they took him to the hospital, waited till the last minute because Leroy was uninsured. They said he would have to hold on till a patient died in order to get on a breathing machine. There was a dying queue. And don't get me started about the prisons. Once Miss Corona rolled into the prisons, every cell became death row, each person just waiting for her to call their number. Thank you.
Damn, Joanne. This poem really lays it out and tells it like it is and doesn't hold any punches. And I thank you for that. It's powerful and unfortunately necessary. And I'm a big fan of you, as you know. So thanks again for sharing this.
Thank you.
Our next poet is Suzy Harris from Portland, Oregon, sharing her poem, My Virus, on page 58.
Thank you, Shawn. My Virus is, the prompt for this poem is Jane Hirschfield's poem called My Doubt. I encourage you to read that wonderful poem. She's a wonderful poet. I wake, virus, thinking of you, like a refrain that won't stop. Squirrels chasing around a tree, the radio, the static. I dress, virus, thinking of you, wishing I could see your spiky clusters. I eat, virus, grateful for these leftover vegetables, my defense, my consolation. I sleep, virus, despite you, hoard sleep. I dream, virus, of robust health, of long ago friends, of poems whole and complete on the page. I dream your antibodies are inside me. I'm immune to your ways. I dream my lungs smooth as vellum, my kidneys primed with blood. Oh, virus, you may govern my nights and my days, but not my heart. You don't hold me prisoner. I don't hold you responsible.
Thank you, Suzy. You know, this poem really personifies how obsessed we've all been over this COVID virus. And I love the way you just turned it around on itself and didn't let it control your heart and didn't place the blame. Oh my goodness, it's such a good poem to keep nearby when frustration sets in. So I think I'm going to keep that by my bed. Thank you so much for that, Suzy. Okay, so our next poet is going to be Marilyn Johnston from Salem, Oregon, with her poem, Clearing Out, on page 68.
So good to be here with all of you. Clearing out. All summer long, I tried to put our things in piles and give them away. I wanted to walk into a room and see blank spaces on the floor and the table, enough to clear my head of the clutter under the bed where dust falls and shadows hide. I emptied the dishes out of the hutch, found homes for the silver, the glass cut bowls, everything the kids said they'd never want. The only item, one set of dishes I vowed to finally use, an extravagant find, bought as a new bride 44 years ago, after hearing everything looks best served on white plates. I wanted to find the joy all around me, like the mindfulness I practiced reading Mary Oliver's poems, Carr's memoir, while I studied the Oswaldo Guayasamín prints on our family room wall. All that's left, soothing, pristine, nothing out of place. And I laugh now, the preposterousness of it all. That September night, while we awaited the alert to evacuate the fire, how I stopped to set the table, just wanting to see the white dishes one final time against the glow of the ochre red, smoky skies.
Oh, Marilyn. This poem really, it does a lot of things. It reminds me how we have to work so hard to manage all of our stuff. And then that turn where you're setting the table one last time. My God, so much tension between what's necessary and what the heart tries so hard to hold on to. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Thank you.
Our next poet is Judy Kleinberg from Bellingham, Washington, with her poem On the Trail, March, page 71.
Thanks, Shawn, and thanks to all of you. On the Trail, March. How courteous we were yesterday as we stepped off the trail to allow others plenty of room to pass untouched. No brushing of shoulders, not close enough to notice that in our isolation, we hadn't bathed, that we'd barely climbed out of our pajamas, run the toothbrush round our mouths before yielding ourselves to this extravagance of spring. The river, an icy celadon in a stripe of afternoon sun. Moss-painted boulders, big as cars, fallen trees in a snarl. The ups and downs of the path playing with the song of the river, louder, softer, as we step aside, wait, smile at the dogs rushing to greet us, to reassure us. It's okay, you smell good. The water pouring away towards some unknown sea.
Oh, thank you, Judy. I love the honesty of this poem. The not close enough to realize that we haven't bathed. And then the dog's reassurance, it's okay, you smell good. Oh my gosh, this poem is just so relatable. So thank you so much. Our next poet is Elizabeth Kolbs from Calabasas, California, with her poem Bioluminescence on page 75.
Thank you, Shawn. So great to be here in this amazing company. What amazing poems. Thank you. This is called Bioluminescence. It's sunset and days of sanitizing cracker boxes, of fearing drowned lungs before the fish wash up. So when the beach is open, we champagne cork into the car, follow the canyon west towards spring tides lavish with rain-fed algae, swell by red swell summoning. Bandanaed, barefoot, we join, all of us strange rat clumped along the waterline, the damp sand delicious, the top halves of distanced faces, the coral sky darkening, the microscopic sirens out there multiplying, and the sun sinks, rack rises, phones glow, light begs light from the abundance blooming in the black, until the breakers crash, neon blue, foam fire, and those single cells ignite, wave after wave, commanding, watch us live. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I really love the way this poem celebrate such simple pleasures of going to the beach. And yes, watch us live. Watch us live indeed. Well done. Our next poet is Lynda La Rose from Los Angeles with her poem, When He Leaves, page 76.
Thank you. When he leaves. When he leaves, block his Twitter, his number, his email, his access to Black, Brown, Asian, LGBTQ+, non-binary, and Indigenous people. When he leaves, convert his tanning bed into a wind turbine. Fake sun gives you cancer anyway, not wind. When he leaves, toss out the Sharpie that doctored the hurricane map, the cognitive exam that one of his aides took for him and passed, the upside down Bible he gasped people to hold, the mask he never wore during the Rona, the empty cans of Goya beans, the snorted crumbs of Sudafed from the drawer of the Resolute desk. He was the virus that we needed to disinfect ourselves from all along. And we are resolute to move on from him. Jettison the Mikes, the Stevens, the Shawns, the Sarahs, the Kelly Anns, the Kayleys, that big blob of greasy mayo Bill Barr. We're tired of white people flying around whitely in the White House. We're putting Putin in the rear view. We're reclaiming our space from Ivanka and Jared. We're dunking Don Jr. into the deepest part of the ocean. We're kicking Eric to the curb while we're at it, because Melania, we really don't care. Do you? We're tossing everyone out. But Mary and Barron can stay. There are Caucasian allies now. When he leaves, let him chill in Sing Sing or San Quentin. He finally got his wall after all. Let him make it great behind bars.
Oh, Lynda, Lynda, that was fantastic. And I hope you could see all the faces reacting to all those wonderful lines in your poem. I was really hoping that by the time this book came out, he was going to be locked up. So we'll just have to hold on to that image of him, letting him make it great behind bars. Thank you so much for sharing that. Our next poet is Bethany Lee from Lafayette, Oregon, with her poem Matter and Wondering on page 78.
Thank you. Like so many, I wrote this about a year ago, and yet it's still useful now, especially as we are trying to figure out how to move back forward into whatever this next season of life brings us. So yes, it's called Matter and Wondering. What if someday, she said, we look back and these are the good old days? And we were all weeping already, if not aloud, then with our bones turning to tears within us, turning to fire, to fear and ashes. And there was soap making and sourdough and questions of matter and wondering if any of it did. And yet I had stood where she was standing, on the rise of perspective, where the air is just clear enough to find your way to wonder, to let something fall away. But I held on with faltering hands to all I hoped would return. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bethany, for helping us try to keep it all in perspective, reminding us how important it is to slow down and to wonder about what matters and to hold on to hope, even with those faltering hands. Thank you so much for that. Our next poet is Rebecca Leet from Arlington, Virginia, with her poem, The Year 2020, on page 79.
Thank you, Shawn. excuse me, the year 2020. At first, I busied myself productively, washed windows upstairs and down, and neatened the linen closet beyond recognition. I pulled from attic trunks pictures of my ancestors to scan for my cousins, though that hasn't happened. As weeks wore on, I swore off making another batch of chocolate chip cookies, but then ate ice cream in the middle of the morning. By summer, I played spider solitaire like an addict, until my inner voice said, if this were the last day of my life, would I want to spend it playing spider solitaire? So I switched to online bridge. I designed a twice-weekly home workout, COVID Crush, and did well for 2 months. Now I walk around the block. I Zoom with friends I haven't talked to since college, and that's nice, but we've discovered why we haven't talked since college. I've exhausted TiVo recordings and Amazon dregs and burned through Netflix nothings, almost resorted to rewatching Ken Burns. Now I read, but I'm tired of mysteries, burned out on Zoom book discussions, and the library wait lists run till 2025. I plan to learn Spanish, so at least I'd accomplish something positive, but my facility still ends at no hablo español. I marched religiously against the Vietnam War, for women's rights, to protect immigrants, to outlaw guns, and 100 other protests. But I didn't march for Black Lives Matter because my children worried about my age and COVID. To expel my anger, I put a handmade sign in my front yard, but felt I had copped out. Copping out probably fell out of the lexicon decades ago, but it's all I feel like doing when life itself has fallen out of the lexicon.
Wow. Oh, Rebecca, I love your sense of humor in this poem and all of our good intentions versus what actually happens. I especially love the home workout, the COVID crush that evolved into just walking around the block. Let's just say I think many of us have had similar experiences, so thank you for that. Oh, goodness. Our next poet is Sherry Hope Levine from Portland, Oregon, sharing her poem.
Hi.
Hi. Sharing
Thank
her
you.
poem, Swimming During COVID on page 81.
Okay. Swimming during COVID. Before entering the pool, I wear my mask, undress at a designated bench, shower, then drop the cloth in a Ziploc bag. The whole room reeks of bleach. It seeps into my nose, stings my eyes. Without glasses, I can't see the other swimmers scurry by, or the blurred blue arrows pointing to the chair, where I'll hide my iPhone into my coat pocket, drop my watch into my shoe. I start to swim the crawl. It's meditative, quiet inside my mind. Until a Speedo capped man lifts his face from the pool, gasps air right into my mouth. Terrified, I duck under the surface, stay below as long as I can, hold my breath and count to 10, like Patty Vigolucci and I raced underwater to the other side of the pool. What did we know about fear or death? We held our breath, splashing our bodies, flapping flippers, arching our backs, somersaulting, tugging the ropes and letting go.
Thank you, Sherry. I have to admit, I hadn't really thought about what it would be like to go swimming during COVID until I read your poem. And who knew all those childhood games and hold your breath and could end up being so useful. So thanks for sharing that. Our next poet is MF McCullough from Portland, Oregon, with her poem, The Fires, on page 93.
Thank you. The fires. Flames the color of honey over marzipan pillars, flues of old empires, dinosaur growths. Walls of flame the color of butterscotch, floods the color of emeralds, injured darkness, injured light. A soft flamingo these flames are not, blotted desert ochre, bushfire red. There's no water here, no delicate webbing of the feet, only a kind of strained and swallowed weeping for silvered palings that are not, for dark nighttime hills, for small moonlight that are not, pale sunlight that is not. The future is here, and it's more sunlight than you can bear, overlaid on sorrow, a pillar of tears, a waterfall of salt, a field and its ghost, a dead moon and its ghost, a leaf and its ghost, a shadow and its ghost. There, under pointed arches rounding to bridges on slippery dips of air, gliding, accelerating, invisible birds on their backs, giggling. Between there and here, bars, the color of pale fuchsia, brushed rose, licked lollipop, a fence of childhood and flowers, galvanized iron forgiveness. You can hear the small birds in the empty trees. You can hear the dry rain.
Thank you, Maura. For such a terrifying topic, you managed to paint an exquisite image. Such rich language. I loved the color of licked lollipops and galvanized iron forgiveness, and to hear the dry rain. Gorgeous, simply gorgeous. Thank you for sharing. Our next poet is Eileen McKern from Portland, Oregon, with Hear the Noise on page 95.
Hi, thank you everyone for being here. This was written early June 2020. Hear the noise. Hear the noise in the streets. It is the people gathering to say they will not have it, will not watch the beatings anymore, the deaths of sons and daughters, of parents, aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, cousins, on out to the most distant, lovers and friends. They will not watch those deaths on camera in the neighborhoods, on the street, outside the door. They will stand up to the police who will not stand with them. Some few stand with them. They will stand up to the soldiers who will not stand with them. Some few stand with them. People have gathered to shout they will not have it. Centuries have been too long. The field has never been level. This race has always been rigged. Hear the noise. It is the sound of a young nation finally trying to grow up and face its future. Children are marching, calling to one another, one to one, across the billion threads of light, sending sound and images across the globe to listening ears and watching eyes. Elders are marching, listen to them. They've marched before, it helped, but wasn't enough. Teachers and preachers are calling for change in voices only slightly muffled for safety. We can do better, they all say. We must do better. If we do not do better, it will all continue to crash down upon us. There is no safe place to hide and pretend that not being the immediate problem qualifies as being part of the solution. Hear the noise. Thank you.
We can no longer pretend that not being the immediate problem is somehow part of the solution. Bravo, Eileen. This is quite the rally cry. Thank you. Our next poet is Carter Mackenzie from Dexter, Oregon, with her poem, The Doll, on page 97.
Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be at this reading and to hear everyone's voices. The Doll. From the memory of a black and white photograph, circa 1909, Lynchburg, Virginia. I never noticed anything but the soft faces, the mother and her 2 young daughters, held close, the youngest sister tucked on her mother's lap, the eldest, my grandmother, nestled next to her mother's side, obedient and composed, her wide satin bow carefully tied. I never noticed anything but the clean white dresses, the cotton folds, the mother central, each daughter leaning inward toward her, against her frame within a gold painted oval frame, a composition of repose. But the youngest, perhaps 3 years of age, her eyes half closed as if in a drowse, the corners of her mouth downturned, sleepy or sulking against the soft patterns of lace, her mother's softness, and my grandmother, age 5, perhaps, how her later stories of the nurse who sang them to sleep every night throughout her childhood stayed with me, yet I never noticed in this maternal portrait placed in my own childhood room what the baby held loosely, like a forgotten bit of cloth meant to comfort, held out of habit, perhaps something she was tired of, almost dropped from the small white hand, the black arm of a rag doll, the carelessness of the hold amidst such care, the doll limp across the baby's legs against the whiteness. And now all I see, why the doll? Not seen being the point, being the directive in this careful triad, not seen, determining the subject, the object, learned before I knew it. This is who we are, and now we are within me, what I keep seeing, what I unearth. Thank you.
Thank you, Carter. You know, this poem is quite a beautiful look inward, you know, kind of that self-examinations of what we've so easily ignored. And I hope it inspires readers to also look inward, to really reflect and make an effort to learn, to grow, to change, or as you say, unearth. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for all your work, Carter, for equal rights. I've really been impressed with everything you've done through the years. Thank you for that. Our next poet is Angie Minkin from San Francisco, California, with Why a Tree Falls on page 103.
Thank you so much, Shawn. It's such an honor to be included in this beautiful and amazing anthology and to be with all of you. Wonderful, inspiring poets. Why, excuse me, Why a Tree Falls for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others. An old tree falls quietly with a sigh, the earth silently relenting its hold. Young trees fall hard. You could say a tree falls because the sky is too gray, because rain presses too darkly on leaves. You could say a tree falls so you can trace life in the rough trunk, its dark thickness, your limbs spread on light-filled branches. Trees fall so you can trace roots, find heartwood. Sometimes you need to feel leaves growing heavy inside your body. Sometimes the leaves are heavy and you can't breathe. Sometimes your body falls hard like a fallen tree, your roots chopped, your body spread-eagled on the ground, your heartwood raw. Rain presses too darkly, sky is too gray. The sky is too gray. You fade to ash. You fade with the tree, your voice silenced, no breath. The people rise, carry your breath, and the earth is no longer silent. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. And I hope people continue to rise, to carry their breath, and like you said, to no longer stay silent. Thank you very much for that, Angie. Our next poet is Annie Clyer Newcomer from Prairie Village, Kansas, with her poem Acorn Woodpeckers on page 111.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you at this poetic gathering tonight. I am so appreciative. Acorn woodpeckers. My neighbors are turning into woodpeckers, stuffing food supplies into grocery carts like small birds, fitting acorns into pecked out holes, creating up to 10,000 tiny storage units in a single tree. I want to place a calming hand on their beaks, then stroke the fear from their feathers, reassure them it's going to be okay. But I am all out of hand sanitizer, so I start running from sold out store to sold out store when I come upon a drone attached to a leash, walking a dog. Look, I yell to socially distanced walkers on the sidewalk. Doesn't this make you believe humans can do just about anything? But before I can add, and soon we'll have a vaccine for the coronavirus, I am on my back, panting for need of air. Then I imagine little woodpeckers on their backs too, tiny ventilators, the only thing keeping their wings afloat. Hoarding is so exhausting. Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Annie. I just love that image of the drone walking the dog. That's just the best. And yes, hoarding is exhausting. That was really fun. Our next poet is Alan Perry from Maple Grove, Minnesota, with his poem COVID Wing, Day 97 on page 119.
Joann, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to share such lovely poetry with everyone. I think you, whether you know it or not, you've created a historical document of poetry in this cross section of work. So thank you. COVID Wing, Day 97. Lines on her face trace the straps she curls over her ears, tightening the medicinal smelling mask around her nose, across her cheeks, under her chin. A face shield tightly banded on her forehead reflects what lies in front of her. Hard to breathe, harder still for her patients. Their lines in the hall grow longer each day. More tubing to connect, intubations to perform, rotation of the dead with the near dying. Hallway to room to hallway, and again. Her voice is muffled as she holds an iPad in front of the patient, encouraging his relatives to say words she's heard before. No one can read her face under the mask, the turning corners of her mouth as breath fades, biting her lip when the patient no longer inhales. Droplets run past her nose into the absorbent mask. Her goggles fog up from the heat, the heaviness of what she must wear. Thank you.
Oh, Alan, this poem, it really got to me. And we have put so much burden on the doctors and the nurses and the PAs, and we owe them all so much. And I want to thank you for reminding us of that. And regarding your comment about this being a historical document, that was kind of one of the motivations of wanting to create this anthology was all about, because as we've learned quite a bit lately, how history gets whitewashed, I wanted something out there that said it like it is and was a real reflection of what we all went through. So thanks for your comment about that. Our next poet is Jennifer Pratt-Walker from Vancouver, Washington, with her poem, Thrush, Anthem in a Pandemic, on page 122.
Well, hi, everybody. I live near a public green belt with a beautiful trail through the forest and along a stream. And so I wrote this the summer of 2020, late summer, finding an essence of normality in nature still. And I do want to say, too, I'm so appreciative of all of you here, because if we hadn't had this crazy time, we wouldn't be hearing this together. And this is a really powerful platform for us to share. So, Thrush, Anthem in a Pandemic. In the crazy quilt of the day, the thrush still unleashes his crystalline circles of song, a living vespers connecting day to the night. In his music lives the tale of how the universe was sung into birth, with the grace of birdsong, gently braiding everything into being. How the goldfinch prays to the thistles spreads salvation over us like butter, there for us to lick off our fingers, even in a pandemic. The birds care nothing for numbers or news cycles. Today the summer is giving herself to fall's dance. Crickets take the night as ministers of passing. I walk out into their opera, bend down, and pick up a pear from the ancient tree. It is sweet as romance. I am naked as a hatchling. I hope you are too, in your house of isolation. Someday we will touch. We will kiss. We will sip deep, taste ripe pears together. The thrush fluting his sonata with never a care. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. This poem is full of such hope and so much to look forward to. So thank you for that. Beautiful. Our next poet is Anne Rankin from Brunswick, Maine, with her poem, Hold Up Alone, on page 124.
Thank you so much, Shawn, and thank you to everybody. I wrote this actually at the very beginning of the pandemic, and it still seems like a very strange time to look back on that. I just moved to Maine actually about 8 weeks before the pandemic hit. So, hold up alone. Hunker down, everyone, their own private Idaho. The country finally begins to mourn itself. The future keeps moving farther than away. Each day, such a long task to finish. Longer still for you, holed up alone, unaccompanied for weeks, months, how long since the world hit pause? Fighting to save that one square of tissue that falls on the bathroom floor, and nursing your fears of the mail, you wash your hands over and over, solo singing the happy birthday song, wondering who's celebrating. Sometimes you need someone else's eyes to open your own. All you want is to be Zoomed by someone somewhere, but life online feels like wearing a wetsuit when what you want is skinny dipping. One day, as you carry out the trash, your neighbor tosses her greeting from another world across the street, and the lilting sound of your name in the wind and the sight of her screenless face turning to meet your eyes, all of it feels so personal it comes close, moves you to tears.
Oh, thank you, Anne. Living life online is like wearing a wetsuit when you really want to skinny dip. Oh my God, I love that. And what a lovely poem to remind us how important human contact really is to all of us. Thank you, Anne. Our next poet is Sandra Rivers Gill from Toledo, Ohio, with her poem, The Thing About Being Shut In, on page 127.
Thank you, Shawn. It's great to be in this space with all of you talented and rich voices. So thank you for being here. The thing about being shut in, we stay shut in. Open doors shut. Nothing escapes except golden keys. We shut shades, shave our minds, grow skewed hair, shut. It matters outside. Shut shutters. The shutting is observable. We whisper, we embrace, we shut worlds into shape, we unshape worlds and words say, come inside, but shut access. We shut up cities, shut shopping, online sales, unshut schools, virtually shut church bells, shut. We learn, shut in. We shut carefully taught homes, shut and unshut gyms, shut our bodies, shut into protest. We shut down stretching our minds. Him, let go. We shut up still voices, hashtags like unshut. Shut out seeking, shut handshakes, limit looks, shut up thoughts. We stumble, we sprint, we unshut isms, unshut, we whisper, shut it down, beat the streets, unshut, bend our knees into lyrical dirges, unshut. Seems we are sewn into shut silence, unshut streaming news, screaming sirens, unshut shoes lay restrained. Hummingbird, unrhymed wings, shut down, pulsating, unshut songs, bones, raging fire. Unshut our eyes, shut doors, shut windows, open, open, open. Thank you.
Yes, 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 Sandra. I think we are all ready for more open, open, open. Open the doors, open for business, open our hearts, and for God's sakes, open our minds. So thank you, Sandra, for that powerful, powerful piece. Our next poet is Joel Sevachinsky from Seattle, Washington, with Remotely Yours on page 135.
Thank you very much, Shawn. In an age when few people write letters, my title imagines the closing of a pandemic and protest letter. Remotely Yours. Even the most ordered hours leave fragments in their wake. A bricolage of shards from which some latter-day student of our condition may try to reconstruct a life, plot an archaeology of the human spirit. In practice, in the moment, in a world gone newly viral, we fall to pieces every day. Whipsawed, jigsawed, machine cut, parsed by our would-be betters or the young who know no better, seeking that imaginary persona the analyst conjures from behind a couch, or the painter prophesies when facing the portrait's canvas. On your own, in front of the mirror, you try to pull yourself together. Less an act of construction than a feat of invention, a summing and a summoning of the subdivided, subcontracted parts we play, a son to our father, a father to our sons, a remote worker, long distance learner, a name with no body for anybody, a Cheshire cat of the internet, asking its image, really, you? Are you safe? Are you there? And where, tell me, where is there? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Joel. I really got a kick out of your wordplay and the rhythm of this poem and how it makes us think about who really is behind that screen, behind that avatar. If anybody really is there, wherever there is. We could go on like this forever, couldn't we? But thank you so much, Joel. Our next poet is Joanna Scandifio from San Francisco with her poem, There's No Cow on the Ice, on page 136.
Thank you for letting me be here with all you wonderful poets. The title of my poem comes from the Swedish idiom, there's no cow on the ice, and it's for all those deniers. There's no cow on the ice, but perhaps there is a cow, slipping and sliding, falling on her back in need of milking. A cow with calves and a farmer who depends on her milk for cheese that he sells in the nearby market to feed his extended family. A cheese with a hint of mountain wind and late afternoon sun. And what if that cow is on its back, with its hooves kicking the moon off course, and the stars become so dark, Odysseus can't find his way home? Then Homer won't have his epic. Teachers won't know what to teach their 10th grade students who become bored and sullen. Wars will start, unending wars, where there are no parades or hats with balloons. Wars that leave the earth so scorched, no grass will grow. Because someone shouted and others followed, shouting louder, there's no cow on the ice. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. I have to say this poem is pretty brilliant in its illustration of those who think ignoring a problem will make it go away. And whether it's denying climate change or the seriousness of a virus, and of course, all the sheeple that follow in that thinking. So well done, Joanna. Brilliant poem. Our next poet is Deborah Bockel-Schmidt from El Sobrante, California, with her poem, Prayer for the Healer and the Healing, on page 137.
Thank you so much, Shawn, and what a treat to be here with all of you today. What a pleasure. This poem was written for my son, who graduated from his physical therapy on Zoom and was just about to begin working with COVID patients. Prayer for the healer and the healing. May he enter those rooms in safety. May his gentleness be known through his hands, his eyes, his voice. May he bring healing. After the desperation for breath, after the place where dreams and fears tangle their roots in body and soul until release can no longer be imagined, may his patients wake to possibility, learning again how to breathe, shedding and reabsorbing scarred flesh, while the tiny branching alveoli are repaired, their new pink tissue flushed with blood red with oxygen so long denied. May it be a kind of rebirth, a glorious reconnection to air which was everywhere, but out of reach, untranslatable, as if behind glass or in another tongue. May it be like returning to oneness of spirit after a time of darkness and separation. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. This is just a gorgeous poem. And I hope we all find our way back to that oneness of spirit someday soon. Thank you. Our next poet is Myrna Dyer Skinner of Portland, Oregon, who has 2 poems in the book, beginning on page 139.
Thank you so much, Shawn. And it's just such a privilege to be with all these voices today. And I'm struck by how we all went through and are continuing to go through this similar experience, and yet the voices and the ways we express what happened, so different and so beautiful. And I just want to ask, do you all remember when we were told to go into quarantine and that it might last for a couple of weeks? This poem was written after it was clear that it was going to be months, and it's called Invisible Wounds. My now dead dog used to lick the upholstery feverishly, like an addict needing a fix. Likely, explained the vet, because she never carried pups to term. We'd fixed her after her miscarriage. Evidently, something remained broken. That need to nurture, embedded in her nature, like her circular tamping of imaginary grass before she settled onto the sofa. What of me? I sit here, a motherless child, a childless mother. My children, grown, departed, possibly dangerous to my health were they to board a plane and return home without isolating for 14 days. What do I do with my need to nurture? I can't bring myself to lick the upholstery. And the second one, thank you. The second one was written much later. Here is what I want to tell you. Quarantine is not your prison. It is not your timeout for bad behavior. Quarantine is your cocoon. Settle into its gauzy stillness. Imagine yourself a chrysalis shimmering, not fragile, even though translucence might frighten you. On gray days, let yourself be a rich pot of tea, brewing Earl Grey leaves and lavender seeds. Let your longing for shared spaces, your hunger for hugs, steep deep in your core. You are a clay pot, tempered with the heat of loneliness. Imagine how rich the taste when you can wipe clean the ashes of forest fire soot from your bone china cups and sit across a cozy table, inches, not feet apart, laughing without fear that your breath carries death, touching the faces of your far-flung children, embracing them again without apology. Here is what I want to tell you. Spring will come again, and the wild world will emerge once more. In this solitude, let your wings form prismatic window panes of azure blue and black. Allow their colors to cure. For now, let your imagination stretch free, catch the wind, and fly. Thank you.
Thank you, Myrna. That was gorgeous, both of them. And I really love this idea of looking at quarantine as a lovely cocoon instead of punishment for bad behavior. That's a really lovely sentiment to hang on to. And your other poem with thinking about how your children coming home could be a danger to you. Yeah, I think many of us went through that concept, and it was really, really hard. So thank you for sharing. And our last poet tonight is Philip Wilson from Beaverton, Oregon, with How to Clean Up After an Orangutan on page 160.
You know, the same thing's going to happen to me. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to pronounce it orangutan from here on out, because that's just the way I was brought up, right? It is important to note that the orangutan knew no boundaries. It has touched everything, especially those things you hold dear, and each item must be scrubbed, washed, and sometimes replaced. In every room, look for disruption. Dust the tops of desks for fingerprints. Check to see if your pens are missing. The orangutan probably set the clocks back, so be sure to set them right again. Check your library shelves. Are the books all there? Check for pages clawed and gnawed. Do not worry about your Bibles, though they may have been handled. Orangutans, as a rule, will never open one. Lesser primates may have drafted in on the orangutan's wake and reveled in its orange leavings. They will rapidly dissipate. Just throw the windows wide, let the sunshine back in, scatter the fusty orangutan air, and be patient. The friends chased off by your intruder will cheerfully return, and together you will all marvel that your house still stands.
Thank you, Philip. I really, really love that extended metaphor of the orangutan, how we can actually apply it to both the virus intruding on our normal lives and, of course, a certain ex-president who we know needs a lot of cleaning up after. So well done, Phil. That was great. All right, we made it through the whole list. Here's a big round of applause for all of you. I want to thank all of our fantastic poets tonight, and thank you, our audience, for joining us in our special Poeming Pigeon edition of the Poetry Box Live. As poets and authors have been impacted by the closure of bookstores and reading venues across the country, it means the world to us that you joined us here on Zoom to celebrate poetry. Next month, our show will be on Saturday, November 13th at 4 p.m. Pacific, and our featured poets will be Laura LaHue, author of Dear John, Christian J. Leonard, the author of The 90th Day, and the father-son duo of Christopher and Angela Luna, authors of Exchanging Wisdom. So to keep up to date on upcoming shows, new releases, and submission opportunities, please subscribe to our newsletter by going to thepoetrybox.com, where you'll find a sign-up form at the bottom of each webpage. And speaking of submission opportunities, we are open for submissions for our next Poeming Pigeon now through the end of October. And in case you haven't heard, we're giving the Poeming Pigeon a brand new look with a larger format and color. So now you can submit either poetry or visual art, or for you uber talented people, submit both. You can find out all the details on our website. So thanks again for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next month. And feel free to unmute yourself so you can chat with the poets or if you have any questions. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Sean.
You're the best, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Oh, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you so much.
Love every reading.
Fine collection.
So much.
Amazing group.
Congratulations, Sean, and all the poets.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Sean.
You did a
You
good
guys
job
were
of
all just
facilitating.
fabulous.
Very good. So much.